My name is Elena Merced, I'm 22 years old. And 3 weeks ago, my parents tried to sell my grandmother's house while she was still alive. But what they didn't know was that Grandma had quietly transferred everything months earlier. By the time they realized the sale was fake, the buyers were threatening lawsuits, my uncle was blaming my father, and my grandmother was sitting in her hospital room smiling like she'd been expecting this all along. I still remember the exact sound my dad made when the realtor told him the deed was worthless. Not anger. Not panic. Something worse. The sound of a man realizing he'd already spent money he never actually had. Before I tell you how everything exploded, hit like and subscribe. And tell me where you're listening from. I read every comment, especially the late-night ones. Now let me take you back to the summer I turned 14. Grandma Evelyn's house sat at the edge of Briar Lake, hidden behind cedar trees so tall they blocked the afternoon sun. The porch leaned slightly to the left. Wind chimes clinked softly even when there wasn't any wind. And every single room smelled like cinnamon and old books. My parents called it the property. Grandma called it home. There's a difference. I didn't understand that at 14. But Grandma did. She always did. Every Friday after school, she'd pick me up in her old green Bic with the broken radio. We'd stop for peach ice cream on the way to the lake. You know what people do when they smell money? She asked me once while unlocking the front door. I laughed. Spend it. She looked at me for a long moment. No, she said quietly. They forget who they love. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. But I should have. Because that same night, my father walked into Grandma's kitchen, looked around the house, and casually said, "This place would sell for a fortune if you ever let it go." The room went still. Not awkward still. Cold still. Grandma kept stirring her tea like she hadn't heard him. But I saw her eyes. That's when I realized she'd already been noticing things I hadn't. Over the next few years, my parents got worse. Subtle at first. Then obvious. Every family dinner somehow turned into a conversation about money. Property taxes. Maintenance costs. Developers buying lakefront homes. My Uncle Ray started visiting more often too. And Ray only showed up when he smelled opportunity. One night, when I was 17, I walked into the kitchen and heard him whispering to my dad. "Developers are offering 7 figures now," Ray said. "You'd be stupid not to move fast." Dad lowered his voice. "What about Mom?" Ray laughed. A dry, ugly laugh. "She's 81, Greg. How much longer do you think she's holding on to that place?" I froze in the hallway. And for the first time in my life, I felt afraid of my own family. After that, I started spending more time with Grandma at the lake house. Not because I wanted to escape. Because I think part of me already knew something bad was coming. One rainy afternoon, she handed me an old wooden box. Inside were photographs, letters, and a folded piece of paper with a lawyer's business card attached to it. "Sandra Whitmore, estate attorney. Keep this safe," Grandma said. "What is it?" "Insurance." I laughed nervously. "Against what?" She looked toward the window where rain tapped softly against the glass. "Greed," she whispered. What happened next changed everything. 3 months later, Grandma got sick. Hospital sick. The kind where doctors start speaking softer than normal. My parents suddenly transformed into completely different people. My mother started bringing flowers to the hospital every day. Dad called Grandma constantly. Uncle Ray showed up with soup he obviously didn't make. It would have been touching if I hadn't overheard them in the hospital parking garage. "The developer wants signatures by August," Ray snapped. Dad rubbed his face nervously. "We need power of attorney first." "And Elena?" Dad shrugged. "She's just a kid." I still remember the look on his face when he said it. Not guilt. Dismissal. Like I wasn't even a person standing between them and the money. That night, I drove straight to Sandra Whitmore's office. The lawyer Grandma trusted. And that's when the real story began. Sandra sat across from me in a tiny office that smelled like coffee and paper files. She opened a folder slowly. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. Your grandmother transferred the house into an irrevocable trust 8 months ago. I blinked. What does that mean? It means your parents cannot sell the property. I stared at her. But they already have buyers. Sandra's expression hardened. Then they've made a very expensive mistake. My chest tightened. Grandma knew. Months before anyone else. She knew exactly what they were planning. Sandra slid another paper toward me. My name was on it. Beneficiary. Not my father. Not Uncle Ray. Me. I could barely breathe. She wanted the house protected, Sandra said softly. And she trusted you to protect it. I left the office shaking. And things got worse almost immediately. 2 days later, my dad announced a family dinner. Which was really an ambush. The second dessert plates hit the table. Uncle Ray pulled out paperwork. We found a buyer, he said smoothly. Luxury development company. Cash offer. Mom smiled at me like this was somehow exciting. Dad leaned forward. All we need is everyone cooperating. Everyone. Meaning me. I looked down at the papers. Lakeview Horizon Development. Purchase price, $1.4 million. My father was already emotionally spending the money. I could see it in his face. Then he made the mistake that destroyed everything. He said, once your grandmother passes, this all becomes ours anyway. Ours. Not hers. Not family. Property. That's when I realized they weren't waiting for Grandma to recover. They were waiting for her to die. I pushed the papers back slowly. I'm not signing anything. The room exploded. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You don't understand adult responsibility. Uncle Ray leaned back in his chair. You're being manipulated. Mom's voice turned sharp. After everything we've done for you. I almost laughed. Because suddenly it was obvious. None of this was about helping Grandma. It was about escaping debt. I found out later my parents were nearly bankrupt. Credit cards maxed out. Second mortgage overdue. Dad's business failing. And they were counting on Grandma's house to save them. But Grandma had already moved the money beyond their reach. Quietly. Carefully. Months earlier. The final confrontation happened at the hospital. And I swear I can still hear the machines beeping. Dad stormed into Grandma's room holding copies of the rejected sale documents. His face was red. Ray looked pale. The developer was threatening legal action because contracts had already been signed. You knew? Dad demanded. Grandma looked tiny in that hospital bed. Fragile. But her eyes. Sharp as glass. You tried to sell my home while I was still alive, she said calmly. Dad's voice cracked. We needed that money. Grandma nodded slowly. And now you know why I protected it. Silence. Heavy silence. Then Uncle Ray muttered, you turned Elena against us. Grandma smiled weakly. No, she whispered. Your greed did that. I still remember the look on my father's face. Like a man watching a door close forever. A week later, the developer sued Uncle Ray for fraudulent representation. My parents stopped speaking to half the family. And Grandma asked me to bring her cedar tea from home because hospital tea tasted like sadness. That line still breaks me. She passed away 11 days later. Peacefully. And after the funeral, Sandra gave me one final envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Elena. If you're reading this, it means I was right about them. I'm sorry for that. But I'm not sorry for protecting you. A house is never just wood and windows. It's memories. It's safety. It's proof someone loved you enough to leave part of themselves behind. Keep the lake house. And when the wind moves through the cedar trees at night, know I'm still home. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. That was 6 months ago. Now I live in the lake house full time. I fixed the porch myself. The wind chimes still sing at night. And every morning, I drink coffee on the same dock where Grandma used to sit wrapped in that old blue blanket. My parents still call sometimes. Careful conversations. Awkward apologies. But something changed forever after that summer. Because once you see what people are willing to destroy for money, you can never fully unsee it. Still, Grandma was right about one thing. Love leaves evidence behind. Sometimes it's in memories. Sometimes it's in letters. And sometimes it's hidden inside legal documents nobody bothered to read. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments what's one place in your life that feels like home no matter what. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe. Because some family secrets don't stay buried forever.